Yeah, thank you. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the welcoming. So I appreciate the university, your department. It's the first time for me, I am here. And okay, so I discover the things, and it's quite pleasant. Okay, so the talk that I will present is a joint work with several colleagues in my institutions. So, by the way, can you hear me? It's okay for the volume? Okay. So it's a joint work with several of my colleagues. So François Portier, who is an associate professor at NCI, Simon Viel, who is my PhD student, and Iko Yamane, who co-supervises the PhD and who is also assistant professor, but in computer science. And then this talk is about something which is called nearest neighbor matching, and which has some application in several fields, and in particular, two important fields, which are average treatment effect. So average treatment effects come from econometrics and biostatistics, and also the study of something in machine learning, which is called transfer learning. Okay, so as an introduction, to motivate the problem, I will introduce the problem of covariate shift. So when I say transfer learning, so transfer learning is a very vast area. And transfer learning consists at looking at how to carry the information on one sample to another sample for which some information is missing. So in the context of covariate shift, which is a special case, so we have a source sample that is denoted by X and Y. So we have covariates and outcomes. And what we have a distribution for the covariates. So that is, we call this the source distribution. So in general, you learn a statistical procedure on it, and you learn algorithms, or you compute an estimator, you want to make some prediction. But when you will have to apply this algorithm or this estimator to some data, you will apply to these new features, which is called X1 star up to XM star, but the distribution of the covariates has changed. Okay, so it is not exactly the same population. But on the other hand, you suppose that you have the same transition mechanism. That is, you don't observe the label Y star, but you know that conditionally on the X star, you have exactly the same distribution. Okay, but the distribution of the covariates has changed. So the distribution of the star variable is called the target distribution. And we assume that we have this kind of equality between the two conditional distributions. So you have many real-world applications around this problem. This is why it's quite popular, and you have many papers about this. So for instance, you look at face recognition for plants, human, of animals. So it can happen the following situation. So imagine that you train an algorithm to recognize some dogs, for instance. And imagine that you train it on Yorkshire. But at the end, you want to apply to a new set of features. You want to classify if it is a dog or not, and you apply to Rottweiler. So of course, the algorithm probably won't work, okay, on the star variable. So this is why we have to adapt it. And for instance, if you want to predict a disease, you can consider some algorithms that are trained to younger people, and then it will be evaluated. You will try to make a prediction for the target, but for older people. Okay, so the problem that you can have with this kind of problem is, for instance, if you consider a parametric model, and this parametric model is not well specified, which is often the case in practice. For instance, you try to fit a linear model, a linear aggregation, but you know in advance, and it is always reasonable to assume that it is not exactly the truth. So you do this on the target sample here. So here it's univariate, you have an explicit expression for the estimator, and you know that you will have consistency under IID observation with an argmin of this criterion, that is a square loss. Okay. Now, if you look at in the world of the star variable, so typically the true parameter won't be the same than theta 0, okay, because the model is misspecified. So it will be the same only if the model is well specified. That is, the conditional expectation is equal to theta 0 x1. But in general, if it is not, so the theta 0 star will be completely different. So the procedure that you will apply for the first sample you will obtain an estimator, and this estimator will be inconsistent for the new problems that you are looking at. Okay, more generally, if you consider risk estimation, so it can be for classification, but it can be also for least square or using the L1 norm. So when you have a different distribution between the source and the target, the risk is not exactly the same due to the fact that you don't have the same distribution for the star and for the X. There is a link, of course, between the two quantities. So if you look at the risk with your function L, which is a loss function, when you write this expectation, so you take the conditional distribution, which is the same for both samples. So it is always the probability, the conditional distribution of the initial sample. And then you have the new distribution, which has a density which is called Q. And then if you make appearing this kind of ratio, multiplying by P, which is the original probability distribution, you see that the expectation of this loss function equal to the expectation of the source sample, but you have a correction, which is a multiplication by the ratio of densities between the source and the target, between the target and the source. So the problem is that in practice, you don't know the probability distribution of the source and the target. So you cannot estimate this kind of reweighting risk. You have to do something first to estimate this density or this density ratio. So this is the goal of many papers who try to do this. So at the beginning, the first tentative was simply to plug kernel density estimator, but it is not so precise. You have many papers that try to use kernel method, in particular the RKHS framework, for instance. So it's widely popular to estimate the weight. But in general, there are two kinds of papers. So most of the times, either people will try to consider the estimation of the weight, or they will try to look at the estimation, what is the effect of the reweighting, but without estimating the weight. Okay, so you have only either theoretical stuff and practical stuff, but you don't consider the property of the estimator. So you have a very interesting paper by Ma, Patak, and Wainwright. And here in the RKHS framework, they show something interesting without estimating the weight. So they show that if there is too much distortion between the true probability density, sometimes you have to consider the reweighting. If the distortion is not so important, you can keep the initial estimation in the non-parametric case. Okay, so sometimes you have to reweight, sometimes not, and this depends on some property of the ratio, in particular integrability property. So here I won't discuss this kind of RKHS framework. I will use the concept of matching, and then related to this, I will discuss another problem, which is also related to this reweighting problem, and which concerns estimation of average treatment effect. So it is another literature. So it concerns the case of a treatment. So it can be a medical treatment, for instance, but it can be also an economic policy. And what people do there is that they administrate a treatment or not, and then you want to look if the treatment has an effect or not. So typically, we have the following situation. So at the beginning, this should appear as an unrelated problem, but you will see at the end that it is related. So we observe a binary random variable, a sample with a binary random variable, which indicates 1 or 0 if the individual has been treated or not. Then you observe a set of covariates and a response. But depending on the value of W, only one of the two outcomes here will be observed, and the other won't be observed. Okay, so if I is the treated group, you only observe that one, and if I is the control group, you only observe Y I 0. Then we observe this kind of variable. And the aim is to estimate what we call the treatment effect, tau, which is simply the expectation of the difference between the variable when there is a treatment and the variable when there is no treatment. And there is sometimes an assumption, many times this assumption, which says that given a characteristic of the individual, the treatment is independent from the outcome that you can observe. Okay, so in this way, when you try to compute the expectation, so for instance, let's look at the expectation of y1. So you take two conditional distribution, you express this with the expectation under the treatment plus, with the weight, the expectation when in the control group, when there is no treatment. So for the first expectation, you have some observation. That is, you look at simply an empirical average, which defines a natural estimator. Okay, so you take the effect of the variable corresponding to the treatment on the people that are treated. The problem is the other expectation for the control group. So here, when the individual is not treated, you don't have access to the value of the treatment, the outcome. So, but what you do under the conditional independence property, so since the conditioning of y given x and w does not depend on w, you can change 0 and 1. You can make appearing this ratio of density, and at the end, under the non-treatment, you go back to the expectation under the treatment after waiting. Okay, so it is exactly the problem that we had before when we evaluated an expectation in the transfer learning. And similarly, you have also this symmetric property when you look at y0. So there is a seminal paper that studies a way of estimating the treatment, which is the paper of Abadieh and Inbens in Econometrica. And in fact, they study what they call matching estimator. So to estimate this difficult expectation here, what they simply do is that, so they will consider, in fact, all the variables on the treated group, all the variable y, for which the covariate is not very far for the set of covariates for which I have no observation. So for instance, I take the case closest observation, where the radius, which is called the radius here, is simply a k-order statistics. And they take the average of this. Okay. So in this sense, you can express again this estimator, and this estimator is simply an average of the observed y1, okay, multiplied by a quantity which is up to a normalization, this mk of xj, which is simply the number of times for which xj is used as a match. They call this, I use an observation as a match, and this quantity is very important. It estimates the number of times xj is used as a match in the sample. And it was shown in a recent paper that under some condition, this kind of quantity is an estimation of the ratio between the density. So this is another way of estimating this ratio with respect to kernels, with respect to other methods, is to use this kind of matching estimator. Okay, so now I will consider the problems in which I can embed both situations. Then I go back to this notation, initial notation between the x and the x star variable. So I consider still a source sample with a set of features and a response. Then I note the source probability, and I assume that there is a probability density with respect to the Lebesgue measure. And then I consider a different distribution with density Q for the target sample. And I assume that both conditional distributions are the same. And the aim here will be to estimate an expectation for a non-observed y star. Okay. Then if you look at what it gives here, this expectation is simply given by the integral of the conditional expectation, which is the same in the target sample and in the source sample, integrated with respect to the target measure. Okay, so what you want to estimate here is simply a smooth functional of a conditional distribution or conditional expectation by integrating with respect to a smooth density. Yeah. Yeah. So we have investigated two approaches. So the first one is to try to generate directly the label. So you don't observe the label, the Y star. The idea is to say that I will try to approximate, to simulate approximately this label. So in this sense, you will have approximated labeled sample, and then you can do it, you can use it for estimation after. Okay, so this is the general idea. So to do this, the idea is very simple. It's also based on the idea of matching. So from the source sample and the target sample, so we look at, for the xj star, the k nearest neighbors in the source domain. We pick one index at random inside, and then we generate the label by taking randomly one of the values yi. Okay. And formally, it means that if you look at the conditional distribution, you simply select y with probability 1 over k, that is uniform, across, in fact, this nearest neighbor, and you estimate the conditional probability using a weighted empirical measure of the observation in the source domain. Okay. And another definition for this radius is the case order statistics, that is the case closest observation from the point that you consider x. You can also define the things like that. Okay, so then now at the end, if you want to estimate, for instance, an expectation, so you can simply use the empirical average using your approximated simulated output. So now, if you look at this property of this estimator, so suppose that we take the E tilde 1 of h, which is simply the conditional expectation of this quantity given the source sample. So it's exactly equal to this kind of integral with respect not to the true conditional probability measure, but with respect to an approximation of this conditional probability measure. And as you can imagine, for instance, if you look at the definition, if you look at the difference between the estimator and this E tilde, okay, which is simply the conditional expectation, so the error is of order 1 divided by a root of the sample of the number of variable in the target sample, because we simply take an empirical average like that. Okay. So this is not the difficult task to evaluate. What will be more difficult, it's the challenging problem, is to evaluate the rate of the difference between E tilde and the expectation that you want to estimate. So this is called the estimation error. And previously, we call this a sampling error. So the main point is to evaluate the estimation error. So we can also define another approach. And for the other approach, we take exactly the analog of the average treatment effect estimation. You take this average of the initial source sample, and you weight this by the number of times that xi is used as a match. Okay, it is exactly the analog of the average treatment effect. So if you look at what gives this estimator, it is simply the empirical average of an estimation of the conditional distribution. And here, the g hat, which is here, you recognize the nearest neighbor estimation of the conditional conditional expectation. So, and if you want to make the link between both estimator, if you take the first one and you take the conditioning with respect to all this information, so you recover a quantity which is very similar to that one, except the difference is that except putting xi in the first argument, you put xj star. But you know that on this event, the xj star will be very close to the xi. Okay, so at the beginning we were thinking that the estimator could be very different, but they are not so different in some sense. So in fact, they have the same properties. So generating the label in this way and looking at the extension of the average treatment effect estimation is almost similar, and we will recover this for the theoretical result. So the assumption used to know how fast we can estimate this kind of expectation for the y star when the y star is not observed. we use some mathematical assumption. So the first one, we look at a well-shaped domain. So we look at a compact domain, simpler to study. And we have an assumption on the geometry of the domain, which is classical when you use a nearest neighbor estimation. So we assume that when you take the center of a ball in the domain, the trace of the ball, the intersection of the trace of the ball with respect to the domain is lower bounded by the volume of the ball up to a constant. Okay, so this corresponds to a well-shaped domain. So typically, when you have something like that, you know that you won't have a lot of problem, for instance. But now, if you take this kind of spike here for the x, you know that when you arrive here, when you look at the trace of the ball, you will have some problem. So it means that it imposes some regularity on the support of the covariates, avoiding, for instance, some kind of spikes at the boundary. This is the idea. Okay, so we have another assumption, which is a strong limitation also. I will go back to this at the end of the talk. We assume that we have some lower bound or upper bound, in fact, for the some densities. And under this assumption, the restriction is that if you look at the ratio of density, the ratio of density will be bounded. So in fact, we are investigating a very simple case. Okay, but actually, the problem was not close to find the convergence rate, even in this case. And we have some assumption about Lipschitz regularity for some conditional expectation. For instance, G, or another function for the first version, but it's almost similar. And we have a boundedness of the conditional variance, which is another regularity condition. So in this case, we can show that we obtain the following rate of convergence, which depend on two quantities. So you have 1 over root n, 1 over root m, okay? And you have another term, so this is dimension-free, but you have a dependence in the dimension for the first term, which will be a kind of Biais term, and it is k, that is the number of neighbors, divided by n at the power 1 over d, which means that it will become very bad when d will be large, okay, when you increase the dimension. This first term is the Biais. I will give the details after. And for average treatment effects, such results, in fact, were already available. We simply generalize it. And we'll study also the case of a sampling, which is very similar. And what is interesting with this kind of thing is that you simply optimize the upper bound with k, simple. You take k is equal to 1. Okay, so you take k is equal to 1, you take simply the one nearest neighbor. Okay, if you want to pick the neighbor, you simply take the closest. Okay, and this gives an optimal upper bound already. So the advantage of this is that you don't have any parameter to tune. Okay, if you go back to the ratio estimation with kernel density, for instance, you have to tune the bandwidth. Okay, so here you simply take k is equal to 1. So you have nothing to tune. And the other thing is that you have some standard parametric rate of convergence for d is equal to 1 or d is equal to 2. Because in this case, you have either 1 over n, either 1 over root n, if the dimension is equal to 2. Okay? So you recover the parametric rate of convergence, but only for the two first dimensions. And in fact, the theoretical problem will be to try to find the parametric rate of convergence for all the possible dimensions, if you increase the dimension. This will be an important problem. Okay. So you see that here you converge more faster than the usual non-parametric rate for Lipschitz function. It is normal because it is a semi-parametric problem. Okay, you simply estimate an expectation, a finite dimensional parameter. Yes?
Yeah, so K plays a role in the bias, but does it play any role in the value?
No, simply in the constant. Simply in the constant.
So
yeah.
if you increase K, like the variance is not reduced.
No. In terms of rate, no. But in fact, in the C, you have a dependence on the K, and on the dimension also. No, sorry. In the C, you don't. In the C, you have a dependence in D, but you don't have a dependence of K. And for the rest, no, you are right. On the C, you don't have a dependence. It is on the dimension. I missed. But not of course. Okay, so if you want to have an intuition about this, or maybe it's quite difficult to explain the technical proof, but I just mentioned some equality. So you can decompose using three terms this difference between the estimator and the target. I use, for simplicity, the case A is equal to 2. That is the second estimator. The first one is very similar. So what you have first, you look at the expectation conditionally on the x minus the expectation. This gives this expression. And this expression is typically an integral of the classical bias in nearest neighbor estimation. This is called the conditional bias. So here you have a second term, which is the estimator minus the conditional expectation with respect to the x and the y. And here it is simply an empirical process for the function g hat. And you have a last term, which is simply the integral of the classical variance term in nearest neighbor estimation. Because here you recognize some residual variable. The conditional expectation is subtracted to the original variable. Okay? And of course, g hat is simply the non-parametric estimation of the regression function with nearest neighbor. Okay. So the two last terms are variance terms. So of course, what is expected is that the first one is equal as a rate m minus 1 over m. Okay, it's an empirical process with some independent observation, and both samples are independent. What is more subtle is that the second variance term is of order 1 over n. And when you look at the usual here, when you look at the usual variance for nearest neighbor, typically the rate is 1 over k. But here we take a smooth functional of this. We integrate with respect to the smooth probability measure, and this has the effect to speed up the rate. And instead of getting 1 over k, you take 1 over n. So unfortunately, I don't have the time to show you the details. And now what is interesting, I will show you the detail for the bias. For the bias, if you look at this, you simply use the Lipschitz property of the regression function. So you can bound this using the radius. And now you can simply look at the expectation of the radius, or the expectation of the power of the radius, of the square of the radius. And here, this radius is simply an order statistics. Okay, so it's a k largest distance with respect to the center. And we have expression for this using order statistic property. And we can show that the rate is k over n power 2 divided by t. This explains the rate for the place. So what is the limitation, to summarize the things? The limitation is the dependence of the conditional bias with respect to the dimension. It is worse if the dimension is large. For the variance term, we have a difference between the original variance term of KNN estimation, which is due to the fact that we use an integral of this variance, and this speeds up the convergence rate. But the natural question is to find a way of assuming more regularity on the conditional expectation and to see if it is possible to speed up the rate, especially for the bias, okay, in terms of dimension. So it's possible. So this is why we will use the second order property. And for the second order property, I will show you some intuition on how we will add another geometric condition on the domain of the covariate to improve the bias. So here, let's take again the bias. And with this bias, we can rewrite this, the sum over all the variables, which are in the nearest neighbor ball. We can write it with suitable index as the sum over k indices. So you take the indices corresponding to the first closest observation, okay, from the center x. So if you look at this, the intuition is that you can make a Taylor expansion and to consider the first term using the gradient of the regression function. So you use the gradient and you introduce this notation. So if you do this, so typically when you take the expectation, it is expected that it is this quantity. And what we will make a distinction. We can get a better rate for the expectation if we restrict it to the events, which is written as follows. That is, the radius is smaller than the distance to the boundary. Okay, so you can consider here the situation where the radius of the nearest ball is so that the ball is included in the domain. Okay, otherwise the ball intersects the complement, and we make this distinction. So by making this distinction, we try to find the distribution of the difference between the observation and the center divided by the radius. So it is a direction. You look at the direction of the nearest neighbor. Okay. Imagine that the probability distribution is uniform. Okay. It will be uniform on the sphere. Okay. But now it is not uniform on the sphere because the distribution is not uniform. The distribution is density P. Okay. So it's quite intuitive to have this kind of expression. You have a density which is up to a constant P x plus the radius times the angle on the sphere. Okay. So it's quite natural to have this formula. So if you reduce this expectation to this event, what will happen is that since the ball is inside here, you can use some Lipschitz property for the density, if you assume it. And instead of having one radius here, you have the radius square. Okay? Then you have a better things. You have a better control. And then if you look at this expectation, you go back to this expectation, you have the expectation of the square plus the expectation of the radius. You cannot do better if the ball is not included in the support here. And then you look at the expectation of the radius when the radius is larger than the distance to the boundary. So for the technical argument after, it works as follows. So if you look at the expectation of the square of the radius, you have this rate of convergence. Okay. And if you look at it is possible to show that if you take the expectation of the radius when the radius is large, at least when it is larger than the distance to the boundary, you have the usual k over n power 1 over d, but you have a deviation with an exponential factor. So this speed up, in fact, this expectation, so with respect to simply the expectation of the radius. And then, if you want to increase the rate, you expect that this quantity is smaller than this quantity. And in order to have this quantity smaller than this quantity after integration, it means that you will add this condition. L, you take the supremum over L power 1 over d and the integral of this expectation, which involves the function which associates to x the distance to the boundary, and this should be finite. Okay, so it's quite strange condition, but I will show you that it has another expression, and we can find suitable condition in such a way it is satisfied. So of course, when the support of the target measure is included in the interior, here delta is lower bounded, and of course this quantity is convergent. Okay, the supremum is finite. So the main question is that we do not want to assume that the support of the target is included in the interior. Okay, and in fact this condition is also satisfied. I will show you several examples after. So suppose now we have the assumption that we wrote before. Adding this assumption A, okay, condition on the boundary. So now for this stochastic BIs, we have a better rate. So the case 3 here corresponds to dimension 1, which is specific, but otherwise it is 4 over d. Previously, we had 2 over d. Now we have 4 over d using this condition. And this shows that we get now the parametric rate of convergence, not for d smaller than 2, but now for d smaller than 4. So we have a good rate, parametric rate for the first dimension. So it's better. But unfortunately, we cannot do more with this estimator. We cannot do more. And for the average treatment effect, one can apply it. And in fact, we show that we have the parametric rate with the same constraint of the dimension. And we show that the estimator is asymptotically efficient in the semi-parametric sense when the dimension is 1, 2, or 3. And previously, in the econometric literature, the result was only for dimension d is equal to 1. But in fact, it's possible also to do better, but at least the result that we have here improves what was known. Okay, so now I will give a bit of geometry, how to analyze this condition on the support, this geometric condition on the support. So I rewrite the first one, which is the condition, in fact, the second one that I presented, which is A, and the x2 assumption, I remember that you look at the trace of the ball and the volume should be lower bounded up to a constant by the volume of the ball. Okay. So we have this kind of property. So these two assumptions are always satisfied when you have a convex compact support for the covariate, or when the boundary is quite smooth, for instance, when it is a submanifold. So a submanifold means that locally you can represent the boundary as a curve of the graph, and for which you have differentiability. Okay, so we go back to this point later. And the last thing is that both conditions are stable finite union. So you can take either convex, either regular boundary, and some finite union. So this means that it is reassuring in the sense that it's not too demanding, in fact. But expect that you cannot consider some spike like that. Okay, so just to illustrate these things, so I will simply, how much time do you have?
About 10 minutes.
10 minutes, so it will be perfect. So let's illustrate this with this picture, with the conjugation A in the manifold case. So there are some quantities that you can forget, but because it was included in the paper for other reason. So here you consider the distance of X to the boundary, okay, X to the boundary. And here you know that using the submanifold assumption, locally around Z, you can write the boundary as a graph of the map, and the map is called phi j here. And due to the regularity and the Lipschitz property, which is follow from the differentiability, you will be able to lower bound the distance to the boundary by the distance to the point of the graph. Okay? And if you look at the distance between the point and the point on the graph, okay, it is the difference between two coordinates. Then you simply apply Fubini theorem, and using Fubini theorem, by integrating over this coordinate first, it's very simple after to show that the condition A is satisfied. Okay. So the way of what is difficult is to lower bound the distance to the boundary, and you can use the lower bound by the distance up to a constant to the distance to the graph of the function. And for instance, let's illustrate also in the manifold case the condition x2. And for this condition, what you have, when you have regularity here, so locally it behaves as a graph of the function, okay? And due to the fact that this graph is regular, you simply know that when you look at the trace of the ball inside the domain, the angle here that you consider is always lower bounded by a positive quantity. And this is due directly to the regularity that you have. You look at the trace of the ball, and you always have a minimal value of the angle. Okay? And if you have a minimal value of the angle, okay, using the compactness assumption, it makes that the trace of the ball is always lower bounded by the size of the ball up to a constant. But the key point is to show that there is a lower bound in the angle, and it is possible to show it. So this is an illustration using some picture. So at the end, it means that these assumptions are reasonable, okay? And it's quite, we have a formal proof to show that it works. Okay, so another, this problem is also related to a problem in math. We realized this before, because if you look at this condition A, this condition A means that if you look at something what is called a tube, okay, so you consider the points that are at distance at most of epsilon of the boundary. This is a tube around the boundary, and then it means that the volume of the tube with respect to the probability measure is controlled by epsilon up to a quantity. And we show, we found after that for smooth submanifold, as being more regularities than just differentiability, there is something which is called the tube formula of Hermann-Weyl. And this tube formula gives directly the volume of the tube as a polynomial of epsilon. So it was a very complicated proof using integral theory. But there is a formal proof. And then we recover a bit this fact here. Okay. Okay, so now we have solved, in some sense, the problem for dimension d is equal to 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it remains to solve the problem for higher dimension. So it's not our job directly. It's the job of some people named Holzmann and Meister, who recently proved something. What they did, they applied exactly the same idea, but to local polynomials. So you remember that the expectation that I want to estimate is simply the integral of a conditional expectation. For estimating the conditional expectation, as we showed before, you can use the nearest neighbor estimation, okay? But the nearest neighbor estimation is a particular case of a local approximation of the function h by polynomials, where you consider all the monomials in d coordinates. So with a degree at most L, so the monomials means you take the differences, you make the product of the differences, you have several coordinates, so you make the product and you use a suitable exponent such that the sum of the exponents is less than R. So this is the multivariate notion of a polynomial of order L, okay? And then you apply the same things. So if you consider the case L is equal to 0, in fact, you recover the estimator that we already studied. So it's a kind of extension. And what Holzmann and Meister did and what we did, we improved their result. So they showed, but under an assumption which is more restrictive. Sorry. Okay. So they show that the expectation of the square of this bias, which is really the difficult part to control, can be k over n times 2 divided by d by an arbitrary exponent that can be large and which depend on the regularity. So it depends, in fact, on the number of derivatives of the regression function that you have to estimate. And this time, if you assume a suitable regularity on the regression function, you can have the parametric rate at least if the regularity is larger than 1/2 the dimension. Okay, but you recover the parametric rate of convergence in this case. But what Holzmann and Meister did, they avoided this bias boundary condition by assuming that the support of Q is strictly included in the support of the target. So this is not completely satisfying. Why? If you go back to the average treatment effect, you know that you have two problematic expectations involving one ratio and the inverse of the ratio. If you assume that you have one distribution as a support included in the other, one ratio is finite and the other ratio is infinite because you divide by 0. Okay, so this is not completely satisfying. So what they did in their application for the treatment effect, they restrict the expectation to a Borelian which is inside the support. So in practice, it doesn't make a lot of difference, but in theory, it's not completely satisfying. So we were able to remove this assumption by only using x2. Okay, and x2 is simply the trace of the ball is lower bounded by the volume of the ball up to a constant, but without using this unnatural assumption. And here we show that A, the additional condition, is not necessary. Okay, and we can apply this to obtain a root n consistent estimator, whatever the dimension for the average treatment effect, without restriction on the definition of the AT. Okay, so let's, I don't know how much time do we have? Maybe
5 minutes.
5 minutes, 5 minutes, okay. So let's make some comments and conclusion. So first, the important thing in this work is that there is an analogy with two disconnected literature, which is the average treatment effect literature and the machine learning literature with the covariate shift transfer learning problem. So this was not very visible, but when you use matching estimator, you see that you have some related problem in two different fields. What was important in our theory, so it's much more a technical work, we obtain the second order property of the bias when you use differentiability of the original matching estimator. And this is something that was missing in the literature. So that is, we show that we can have a parametric rate when the dimension is up to 4. But this was really a new result. And we also improve the result about the extension, that is with local polynomial, without using some unnatural assumption. So what is important also, I didn't precise this, is that the choice of the K for the local polynomial extension, you don't have any hyperparameter to tune if you want, because you can take the minimal level here, And the minimal level of k is no more 1 in the case of local polynomials. It is something which depends on the number of monomials that you use, and then it depends on the dimension. And it also depends on this capital D, which is simply a sum of some binomial coefficients. But if you compute this quantity and the number of multinomials, you choose k as a lower bound, and then you get a choice for k, okay? Which is the minimal one if you look at this expectation. You take the smallest as possible, but now the smallest as possible is no more 1, okay? It depends on the dimension. Okay, so we also studied some sufficient condition on the geometry of the domain. It was not an easy stuff to understand how this condition work, why they are satisfied, why we can assume it, and it is sufficiently general. So what could be interesting is to have a look to more interesting problem. And more interesting problem consider, for instance, either the case of unbounded support or the case for which the ratio of density is not bounded. I mentioned at the beginning of the talk that due to the assumption that I assume of the density, the ratio is always bounded. And if the ratio of density is bounded, it means that the distortion between the two probability measures is not very high, you know? And typically in the machine learning, what could be much more interesting is that to have a ratio which is not bounded, okay? But I have a very strong student in math, Simon, who already proved many results of this talk. And then he was able to generalize of all what I am saying, but it will be a forthcoming paper to unbounded ratio and unbounded support. And what he showed, in fact, he tried to show that we have exactly the same rate of convergence, but in the constant, you have some integral of the ratio. And the rate, the parametric rate is guaranteed when the integral of the ratio is finite, some integral involving the ratio. And he tried to show if it is optimal or not in this case. So this will complete very well all the results of this literature in the machine learning stuff, but also in the average treatment literature, in econometrics. Okay? She's finishing this, and so I don't know if you are seeking some postdoc here, but I can advertise that this is really impressive. You take one student, you solve all. And you don't have to do anything. You take the corresponding exponential inequality, and so I have finished. Already, it is finished. Unbelievable. So if you want, if you have a postdoc, do not hesitate to contact me. I can advise him. He's a really impressive and very nice student. Okay, so thank you. So let's give some references. So the original paper, so you can just comment. So the original paper in Econometrica is the basic large sample property of the machine estimator that we recover in a more general sense. We have starting to make the connection between density ratio estimation and average treatment effect is a recent paper in Econometrica. So the paper of Holmans and Meister is important because it shows that you can estimate this expectation at the parametric rate with local polynomials. And in general, the econometricians have some alternative to this estimation using the theory which is called doubly robust estimator. But in fact, it requires a much more regularity assumption with respect to that one. So it's very interesting. And we have two papers about this. So the first one was to make the connection between both fields and to look at the Lipschitz case. And in the second step, we write a more complete paper about the second order property and the property of local polynomial by analyzing this geometric condition on the support to show that the results are still valid. And then I will stop there, and thank you very much for your attention.
Time for a few questions.
Yeah.
Quite surprising that you're using one nearest neighbor theoretically solves the problem for you. Empirically, do you see the same, or do you recommend any advantages?
Yeah, for instance, yeah, okay, so what is clear, because I didn't show the simulation, so we have many simulations. So I knew that I will not have the time to show the simulation. This is why, but we will make many simulations. So for the simulation, we can say this. So maybe there is a comment about this. I don't remember if it is at the end. Okay, so it is there. Okay, so the fact that you use k is equal to 1, it is very fast for the implementation because there are many nice algorithms to search the nearest neighbor. It will be difficult to identify k is equal to 1 to k is equal to 2 because the lower bound is up to a constant. So you won't identify if k is equal to 1 is better than k is equal to 2. What will be clear is that it is better than k goes to infinity because with k goes to infinity, you decrease the height. Okay, but for the first value of k, you can take k is equal to 1 because it is the simplest case. The other case, like k is equal to 2 or 3, doesn't prove a lot in general, but it's almost similar. But k is equal to 1 is already, numerically, it's already interesting. What can happen also is that since we look at the second order property, we can have several estimators, the matching estimator with the second order property of the Bias, and the local polynomial of order 1, which is the locally linear. So if you are familiar with non-parametric estimation, you always have the local polynomials with kernel, for instance, and the initial Nadaraya-Watson estimate with second order differentiability. So typically the rates are the same. What can happen here, when you apply the locally linear estimator, at each step, you will have to make a regression, and the number of parameters will depend on the dimension. So imagine that the dimension is equal to d. Okay, for the local polynomial, you have d plus 1 parameter if you count the intercept. Then, if you increase the dimension, sometimes numerically, the local linear estimator is affected, and the initial matching theorem works better. But it depends on the setup. But sometimes it can be difficult to make the locally linear estimator to work when the dimension is large. Of course, the nearest neighbors are not very good when d is large, but it is even worse for the locally linear case. So, yeah.
Understood that you have this faster rate for the variance because we are integrating a smooth function.
Yeah. This is really the condition that makes the things working is that we integral with respect to smooth density.
Smoothness condition where assuming I know that it's leaf this, it has to be leaf this.
Yeah, but for the density, no. For the density, you have simply to assume the density, okay, of Q, and the density is bounded. You simply have to assume this. You don't, for the Q, you don't have to assume that it is Lipschitz. It is for the P, it is for the target. When we want to get an order, when you make the Taylor expansion, when you want to get a supplementary order for the Bias, in this case, we have to assume that P is Lipschitz. But for the Q, we don't assume anything. So when I say regularity for the Q, it is simply existence of the density, and the density is bounded.
We have no other questions, so then we can end.
Yesterday, so finally, I asked ChatGPT, what is show me the local Lipschitz property of the radius when the matrix is positive. And he showed me several references. It seems that it is the case, but it is impossible to find a simple formal proof. So either you have some proof with the several lemmas, it's a big mess. So we didn't catch the good argument for the moment. Okay. But it seems that it is true. Everybody says it is true. We have to find the reference and the argument. Okay. But I think we make some progress because definitely it's sure. But it is not true in general when you look at spectral radius. When you take other type of matrices, so general matrices, you only have the older property. And sometimes, if you take the most general matrices as possible, complex matrices, so it is older and the exponent is 1 divided by the dimension. So it is not Lipschitz. But for positive matrix, definitely we have it. We should have it. I don't know after when you work for more general operator.
Ah.
But maybe for compact operator, we can also have the same property as for the matrices. We'll find it.
Nice talk. So I have a question for you. So it seems like you're mostly focusing on like lean estimation, right?
Yeah.
So if I understand that you can use it like to estimate criteria, for example, ERM or for scores, okay?
Yeah.
So how, well, when you move, and you use this, for example, to estimate like a parameter, for example,
Yeah.
without nonlinear,
Yeah.
not the average, or maybe use it for estimating the criteria.
Yeah.
And what would happen?
Yeah.
How does all this transfer to that? Like,
Yes, that's a good question. So in fact, we provided application in the parametric estimation. So imagine that you want to estimate a new parameter, if it is a linear regression or a non-linear one. So in the parametric case, because what is important in parametric case is simply to have the law of large number to estimate an expectation. That's all. You don't localize anything. So in this case, you recover the consistency of the parameter when you use this approach, when you want to fit a parametric model.
do you have root-end consistency, like, or like semi-parametric efficiency in those scenarios?
No, for the rate, for instance, it would depend on the dimension. Because if the dimension, but in term of efficiency, I don't know. The only result available up now is for the average treatment effect, which is a simple expectation. But I suppose that with the same,
Actually, there are more results, like, for
yeah.
example, all
Yeah.
these like work based on estimating equations with non-parametric reasons.
Yeah.
They all have, I mean, a lot of them has like root-end consistency for.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a.
I don't know.
Possibility, especially for missing data.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, very probably.
Maybe I have to leave the things.
Yeah, I will meet with you later, like, so we'll talk to you more about it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's nice work.
Yeah,
I'm particularly interested in like some of these more detailed results, how.
yeah. You have the reference for the paper, so it is explained in details. So you can upload the paper.
I'm interested in some of these more details, how they push to like the next step.
Yeah.
The subsequent estimations.
Yeah.
But I will talk to you more. Maybe.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
I think.
Nice work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think I will give this now.